Hey guys, so today I wanted to make a video all about my PGCE and teacher training journey. You may or may not know that before I was studying medicine, I actually trained to be a science teacher. So I wanted to make a video all about my experience, kind of giving you an honest insight into how I found it before I forget about it, because I finished the course nearly a year ago now and I feel like I need to just get it out there. If I don't answer your question in this video, feel free to leave a comment down below because I'm happy to answer any questions, or you can send me a message on Instagram. So if you are interested in hearing about my time teaching, then stay tuned because that is what I'm going to be discussing in today's video. So I graduated from Southampton in the summer of 2018 with a biology degree. I moved home that summer after finishing uni, went back to work in the restaurant that I'd worked in as a waitress since I was 16, and quickly realised I didn't want to be doing the evening and weekend shifts forever, and I was getting a bit fed up with doing it quite quickly. A lot of my friends were getting full-time 9-to-5 jobs, and my boyfriend was also doing that, and he was living in Southampton, so if I was given a shift on the weekend it was really difficult fitting in time to see him, and I was kind of just fed up of the waitress life at this point. I've been doing it every summer for university and I was looking for a change. I was also applying to medicine at this time and I knew I had a whole year ahead of me before getting into medicine. Spoiler alert, I got rejected. So I was scrolling through Indeed and I found a job advertisement for a cover supervisor in a school kind of near me. If you don't know what a cover supervisor is, it is basically a supply teacher, except you aren't a qualified teacher and you are purely there for behaviour management, crowd control and just being the adult in the room. And when I looked at the job application, I thought, yeah, I can do that. Just take the register, you know, tell the kids to sit down, be quiet, get on with their worksheet. It'll be a breeze. So I applied for that job and went for the interview and got the job, and I pretty quickly realised that being a cover supervisor is not as easy as I thought it was going to be. You are not very well respected by the kids in the class because they don't know who you are. You're a complete random person in the room. You don't know their names. You're lucky to get a seating plan to be able to know their names to tell them off, and it is honestly a very difficult job. You're also expected to cover every subject, so I was literally out there on the fields covering year 9 PE, telling them how to play rugby when I don't even know how to play rugby. Let's just say it was a learning curve. So I worked as a cover supervisor at that school for 3 months, and it was an hour commute from where I live, so I was getting up really early in the morning to get to the school, and although I was finishing at 3 o'clock I wasn't getting home till like 4:15 because of traffic, and it was a very tough job. Even though you don't have to do anything when you get home, it was draining. Like, I was bullied a lot by some classes, and I was 21, fresh out of uni, so young, never had a real job before, and yeah, it was hard. So around March of that year I saw an advertisement for the same cover supervisor role but at my old school that I went to, and I thought, do you know what, that would be so good because it's only like a 20-minute walk from my house and I already know the school and I really enjoyed my time there as a student. So I applied for that job. So I started that in March of 2019 and I stayed there right until the summer holidays. And although it was the same job, it was still difficult being a cover supervisor. It was slightly better because I was in an environment that I knew, and I was surrounded by teachers who knew me and had taught me a few years earlier, so I had a really good support network. So even if the lessons were difficult, I just felt really at home and I didn't really mind. And it was around March, April time that I found out I'd been rejected from medicine, so I was then faced with another year ahead of me, not being able to do medicine and wondering what I was going to do, and also kind of faced with the prospect that I might never get into medicine because it's so competitive. And I thought, well, what is my plan B here? Like, what am I going to do if I don't get into medicine? And that's when I decided I was going to apply for a PGCE. I say that, I didn't actually apply to the PGCE till June. Do not recommend doing that. If you leave it that late, you might risk not getting a place because they've filled up all the spaces on the course. But anyway, I was very last minute. I signed up in June and got my interview 2 weeks later. So the only place I applied for my PGCE was Southampton through the university. I did look at other routes like Teach First and Skit and things like that, but I felt like I wanted that support network of the university. Also, I knew a few people doing the PGCE through Southampton that year and they were really enjoying it. And being an ex-Southampton student, it all just seemed like the right thing to do. So I sent off the application and I was invited to an interview about 2 weeks after that. The interview day came around. When I got there were 6 or 7 other candidates, and the first thing we had to do was sit a GCSE paper, which was interesting. It wasn't just a biology paper, so I'd signed up to the biology PGCE, but you're expected to teach all 3 sciences, or at least be able to teach all 3 sciences, so it was a proper science GCSE paper, and I gave it my best shot. They don't care if you don't get 100%, they're just trying to see where you're at, because later on in the course we got given those papers back. which was quite embarrassing. After we sat the paper, I had to do a 5-minute lesson. You get told all the information before the interview, so you do have plenty of time to prepare. I did a presentation on the mechanism of breathing. I just used the whiteboard. Some people had PowerPoints prepared, but it really doesn't matter. They just want to see your teaching style, or what you think could be your teaching style at that point, because obviously you may have never worked in a school before, and that's okay, so you might not even have a teaching style at this point. And then after the presentation, I had quite a chilled out panel interview with 2 of the tutors from the science department, and they were really lovely. So the interview is nothing to worry about. Well, for Southampton anyway. I have heard of some more difficult PGCE interviews. I think a week or 2 later I got the offer, and it was really nice because I had my summer holidays off after working as a year for a cover supervisor, which was really needed at that point because I was exhausted. So September rolled round and the course started sort of middle of September. It kicks off slightly before the rest of university, so before all the undergraduate freshers arrive, and it's quite nice because campus is empty but you're with everyone doing the PGCE. So the first 2 or 3 weeks of the course were purely on campus. We were mainly with all the science cohorts, so all physics, chemistry and biology teachers or trainee teachers are put together, and you sometimes get split off into your own subject groups, but most of the time you're one massive group learning everything together. And those first 2 or 3 weeks of the course, you're not in school, you're just on campus learning a lot of the theory and, you know, things like how children learn. You're learning some of the fun science experiments you might get to do or might not get to do. It was a good way to get to know all the other trainees and meet people and just settle into the course before going into schools. I feel like that's one of the big differences between doing Teach First. I think with Teach First you go straight into the school at the start of term, which some people might prefer, but I just needed that little bit of kind of extra university cushioning before going in. After that initial 2 or 3 weeks, you are then sent off on your first placements. So throughout the year you do 2 placements in 2 different schools. I got really lucky with the location of my placements. I told them I couldn't drive, and they were able to give me 1 placement which was a 10-minute bus journey from my house, and 1 which was a 10-minute walk, so I never had any issues with getting to places. I do know some people weren't as lucky and did have a longer commute, so it is kind of a lottery. Also throughout the year we had 3 assignments, and they all counted towards the PGCE part of the qualification. So you're working towards the PGCE, which is the postgraduate certificate in education, but you're also working towards your QTS, which is your qualified teacher status. But I believe the PGCE part is purely the assignments that you do at the university, and they weren't necessarily difficult, but it was a challenge sometimes to juggle those alongside all the lesson planning and being a teacher. One thing I really liked is that we were at university every Friday, so we'd be on placement Monday to Thursday, and every Friday we'd be on campus, which was really nice because it's a good way to meet up with other trainees and chat to them at the end of the week. And it took the pressure off slightly. You weren't doing 5 full days every week, but we were on school holiday timetable, so that's something to remember. You're not going to be on university holidays anymore. You're going to be on school half term, that's it. 2 weeks at Christmas, 2 weeks at Easter, rather than these really nice long university summers that you might be used to. Okay, so now getting into the placements. I was really lucky with my placements actually. I enjoyed them both, and I know after looking up on YouTube other PGCE experience videos, I've noticed quite a lot of people had a bad time on their placement, and I do think what really makes it is the staff, the other members of staff and your mentors at the school, because I had some really good mentors, and both science departments at both schools were really supportive and friendly and never made me feel like I couldn't ask for help. So I do think it is a bit of pot luck, and I do think a big reason why people drop out or complain about their PGCE, it's purely down to luck and whether or not they gel with their placement. So I got really lucky. My first placement was at an all-girls Catholic school in the city centre, and I absolutely loved it there. For the first 2 weeks I was there, I was just observing lessons, which is nice at the start. Gets quite boring quite quickly because watching the same lesson on gases and solids and liquids 3 times with 3 different Year 8 classes, yeah, it gets quite repetitive. But after 2 weeks, you're allowed to start teaching your own lessons. I was given 4 classes and was teaching 8 hours a week. So not a lot, because a full timetable would be 25 hours a week. I had 1 Year 8 class, 1 Year 9 class and 2 Year 10 classes. My Year 8 class were quite challenging. They were quite naughty. They weren't out of control or anything like that. They were just a bit more challenging than my Year 10s, who were good as gold. And every time I had an observation, they would just be like, "Oh miss, we can see you're having an observation. We'll be really good." And I'd be like, coming from being a cover supervisor, it was quite chilled out, because as a cover supervisor I did have pretty much a full day every day, and on this placement I was doing maybe 1-2 lessons a day, and it was different because obviously you have to plan the lessons, but it still felt like less work, which was quite nice. But obviously if you're not coming into it from having some experience in school, it will be tiring, and it was tiring because I think the biggest challenge at this school was that for some reason I ended up teaching a lot of physics, and I am not the most confident with physics. Like, I didn't do it at A-level for a reason, but for some reason both my GCSE classes were on a physics rotation, and yeah, it was hard because I wasn't just planning the lessons, I was also having to recap everything, make sure I was confident in it, and be able to go into the lesson and pretend to the students that I knew this subject really well. So that was a challenge. But yeah, I had a great time there. And then in January I moved to my second placement, which I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't excited to start because I'd had such a good time at my first school, and my second school had not as good of a reputation, and I'd heard like rumours about it, and I was quite apprehensive. It was also a mixed school, and I hadn't been used to teaching teenage boys for a while, so that was kind of making me nervous. It was just a very different school to what I'd been at, and I'd been so happy at my first school that I was not excited. But I was pleasantly surprised actually. I got on really well with the department, and I had some amazing mentors at this school, really supportive, gave me a lot of good advice. There was some more challenging behaviour. I had one year 8 class that we just didn't gel. Just put it that way, it was tough. So don't get me wrong, it definitely was slightly more challenging in terms of behaviour management than my first school, but it was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. In fact, it was much better. I'm really sad that it got cut short due to COVID because I was really getting into like a rhythm of working there and really enjoying it by the time that happened, so I was really sad to leave. And if I hadn't have got into medicine, I was actually hoping to get a job there, so it was all going really well and I had a great time. But don't get me wrong, there were days when I had really bad lessons where I absolutely wanted the ground to swallow me whole. And I think with the PGCE, like, it's about accepting that those days are going to happen, but you're also going to have some really good days, hopefully. And it's about like persevering. I think if there's a class that you really don't get on with, so for example my year 8s, I was trying really hard with them, I was trying lots of new things, but nothing was really working. And I think maybe if COVID hadn't happened, I would have had more time with them to keep pushing and keep trying to make a bond with them. But it is frustrating, and I think that you just have to accept that not all your classes are going to like you, and that's okay. And I have this class I don't particularly enjoy teaching today, but straight after I'm teaching year 9 who are great and I love. So yeah, those are my 2 placements, and then COVID happened. So hopefully schools won't be shutting again, fingers crossed, but I thought I'd briefly tell you what happened after lockdown. Schools shut and we were all told we're not going back to placement. At the time we thought we might be going back by Easter. How naive we were. How it worked for us was that we weren't expected to teach any more lessons online or do any of the remote learning. We were just told to focus on our assignments and also make resources ready for the next school year. At this point I'd found out I got into medicine, so I was looking more towards that rather than thinking about making more resources for my lessons. But I still had to gather evidence for my teaching portfolio, so I'd still make some lesson plans because I had to show what I've been doing over those few months we were in lockdown, because the course didn't finish till June, so we had to keep going. We still had the university Fridays, they were just on Teams instead. We would just do more training and they kind of tried to keep those going as per normal, and that was it. And to be honest, there wasn't much they could do. Like, they just had to give us our grades based off the observations we were having in March. It's a shame because I think I was really getting quite confident by March and I was feeling more and more like a teacher, but it wasn't our fault. We weren't going to be able to go into schools and teach anymore that year. They made it quite easy to be able to pass that year, so I think we got quite lucky. And yeah, we finished the course on Teams. We did a little celebratory day. Haven't had my graduation yet. That was supposed to happen last December, but who knows when that's going to happen. But it will be quite fun because I'm looking forward to meeting up with my trainee teacher friends who are now all proper teachers. So I wanted to quickly touch on the workload of the PGCE and how I found that, because I do think that is something that I was not sure about before starting the course, and I want to be honest, it's quite a lot of work. I spent a lot of weekends planning lessons, a lot of evenings planning lessons. I would go to school, teach some lessons. Even though I had frees at school to plan lessons, I would still be planning into the evening. When you first start out in teaching, you are just going to be spending a lot of time planning, and that is something you'll have to get used to. And I do believe that is why a lot of people don't enjoy it, because there's so much admin and you are just expected to do work outside of teaching hours. I think my biggest piece of advice with dealing with the workload is make the most of your department's resources that they already have. They've probably already got PowerPoints and lesson plans set up, so if you can steal those and just edit them to make them more you, then I would just recommend doing that. At the start of the year I would try and be stubborn and make my own lessons from scratch, but it's better just to sort of cherry pick bits from other people's lessons and make them your own. It will save you so much time, so I'd recommend doing that. I'd also recommend picking one day of the weekend that is your day off. So Saturday was my day off. I did no planning. I did not think about school one bit on a Saturday. That was time for me to relax and chill out. And then I would spend Sunday prepping for the week, making sure I had everything ready. Just make sure you don't become wrapped up in spending every day planning, because you will get burnt out. You'll probably end up crying like I did quite a lot at points in the course. So just bear that in mind. On top of all that, you've got assignments to do. So you have 3 assignments throughout the year. And what I would recommend with that is that you just do little and often, rather than waiting till the week before to do the whole thing because you haven't thought about it the whole term. Trying to plan lessons and write 3,000 words, that is not fun, let me tell you. I think I've managed to answer most of the questions that I got asked on Instagram, but somebody did say, I would love to do a PGCE, but the thought of doing observed lessons terrifies me. Let me tell you, that terrified me as well. I think the thing you'll realise quickly though is that you are going to have somebody watching every single one of your lessons. There is always a teacher in the room with you watching your lesson, so you will get used to it very quickly, the feeling of somebody being there and watching you, and that is quite scary at first. But when it actually gets to the time where you're having formal observations, you're already kind of used to it, and although it is slightly more scary when it's a formal observation, I think the fear isn't there so much. Even if it's the worst lesson ever, like, a good mentor will be able to find some positives in it as well as some constructive criticism. So it's just about having a thick skin. I did have one really bad formal observation where my tutor from uni came in, and your university tutor only comes in twice throughout the year, and the first observation with her had gone really well, and this was a few months later. So obviously I wanted it to be better because you'd hope that I would have improved in my teaching by then. But it was just awful. It was with my year 8, so I didn't really get on with, and they came in Monday morning and were not in a good mood, and they could see that there was a visitor in the room, and it just wound them right up, and it ended up sending out, I think, 3 of them. I remember just wanting the ground to swallow me up. Like, I wanted the lesson to be over. It was the longest hour of my life, and I thought I was going to get ripped to shreds in the feedback session, but actually my mentor said, you should have sent them out sooner, like, you were too nice. You always are gonna think that it's worse than it is, and that's all I'll say. Is every time I thought it was the worst I've ever been in a lesson, it was never as bad as I thought. So try not to worry too much about the observations. They become just part of the routine by the end of the year. One question I got was actually about money and how much money I got to train to teach. So if you're looking to train to teach, you've probably already looked this up, but at the moment some subjects get bursaries to train to teach, and it depends on the demand or how many people are training to teach in that subject. Last year when I trained as a biology teacher, I got a £26,000 bursary, which was tax-free. I was paid it over 10 months in 10 equal instalments, and you don't have to do anything to get that. You just join the course, and when you start the course all the information is given to you and the money is provided to you. Some people do take a tuition fee loan, and some people use the bursary to pay the tuition fee. Also good to know, you can get a maintenance loan as well if you want to, so bear that in mind if you want to use the maintenance loan to pay your rent and also keep the bursary. Just depends on how big you want your student loan to be. I'm not gonna lie, the bursary was great. However, I have had a look. This year, if you want to train to be a biology teacher, you only get a £7,000 bursary, which is still great. In 1 year, it's gone from £26,000 to £7,000. So it does fluctuate a lot and changes. So just make sure you're keeping up to date with the bursaries. I know chemistry and physics, you still get £25,000 at the moment. It really just depends on the demand for each subject. So make sure you're looking that up if you are thinking of applying this year. And the last thing I wanted to discuss is why I left teaching. And obviously if you follow me already you'll know, but I got an offer to study medicine while I was doing the PGCE, and I was really nervous to tell my tutor at university about this because I'd been applying for teaching jobs. I didn't think I was going to get into medicine, and to be honest I was pretty set on the idea of being a teacher at this point because I'd enjoyed my time doing the PGCE, and it just felt like the next step would be to be a teacher. But when I got that offer for medicine, I knew I wanted to give medicine a go, and when I told my tutor, she was really happy for me and there was no issues. Nobody minded, everyone understood. People had lots of questions, but nobody said I'd done anything wrong, and it is okay. I went into it with good intentions. I wanted to train to be a teacher and had every intention of being a teacher had I not got into medicine. It just so happened that I did, and now I have a PGCE, so if I ever want to quit medicine, or maybe in 20 years I decide I want to give something else a go, I can still go and be a teacher. And yeah, no worries, I've still got that qualification. Okay, my student debt is slightly higher than it needs to be. I think a lot of the skills I learnt being a teacher are definitely transferable to a career in medicine, so it definitely wasn't a waste of time and it wasn't a waste of a year at all. So yeah, I hope that was helpful and gave you a bit of an insight into how I found my PGCE. If you do have any other questions that have come up because of it, please don't forget to message me or leave a comment below and I will do my best to answer those quickly. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!